Welcome everyone to the January 13th OpenJ9 community call. Usual reminder to add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees just so we know who's been attending the call. And then we'll jump into our agenda. And as always, the first item is a pause for people to add anything new that they want to the agenda. You can either add it now, call it out, or add it to the end of the agenda, and we'll cover it when we get to any other business section. So I'll pause for a second if there's something somebody wants to jump into right off the bat. Right. Looking at our list of lightning talks, we don't have one set up for this week. We do have some other potential topics here. So if there are, if there's one of these items that you'd like to tackle, that you'd like to talk about, or something else you'd like to give a quick lightning talk to the community around, either pencil yourself into the agenda or reach out to me via Slack and we can get something set up. Take a look at the new incoming user raised issues and just make sure that anything that's come in the past week has been getting the attention it needs. Right off the bat, I see that everything within the last week has had some level of discussion around it. So that's a great thing to be seeing. Is there anything in this list that needs some immediate discussion, even going back a little further today? Does anyone want to call anything out? Okay, then I will jump back to the agenda. The usual reminder around help wanted issues. As we get close to the code split at the end of the month for the Java 16 release, might be time to start knocking off some of these issues if there are ones that you've opened and been leaving them, want them resolved before this upcoming release. Now might be a time to grab them and get them resolved. And then we can open more targeting the next release after that, or move them forward if they're something that can wait. All right, so that brings us then to our download trends. So the overall download trends are looking pretty good. If we look at just the OpenJ9 version of that trend, we're seeing a sharp increase in downloads in the start of this year, which is great to see. That's people grabbing the milestone builds or which particular releases that is. Tell that here. Yes, I could.
I think you need to filter on the series to get an individual version.
This uptick in the 11 downloads. Contributed to some of the early ones. Interesting. It's a bit of a bunch of 11 downloads, bit of 8, sort of across all the releases there. If we look at the trend for Hotspot as well, they're in a similar boat of a lot of fairly good uptick over the last few days. The 8 downloads are leveling off. The 11 continues to climb. And interesting, our JDK 15 downloads are greater than the Hotspot ones. That's quite an interesting thing. Don't know what would be driving that, if anyone has a theory or an idea. Okay, well, let's circle back to the agenda then. We are coming up very quickly now on the final GA for the 024 quarterly release. I took a quick look at the milestone plan early this morning and see that the only thing left is the update OpenSSL version, which is the item that we typically roll forward as the updates get made. So that's great to see, and a big thank you to everybody who's been involved in closing off the issues that went into this release. Is there anything that needs to be called out as a potential blocker for the upcoming GA builds? Pete or Toby, do either of you have concerns?
No concerns. I think we're good to go.
Excellent. Right. Then the next item is the 025 release, which is coming in March, and we tentatively have the code split scheduled for the 31st of January. So when we take a look at that milestone plan, we still have 75 open items here. So there's a lot of things that have to be either closed out or out of this release. There's not a lot of time now between today, which is the 13th, and the end of the month. So really that kind of gives us, 2 weeks really to complete these. So if you do own one of these items, please make sure that it's your focus and we're getting them finished out and or moved out of this release. I know we've talked about that date being a little bit flexible, as we're usually a little able to move that around a bit. I think my preference here, especially if possible, is to do double delivery for anything critical that's not going to make it by that release date. So there are items that may have to be delivered after that code split, but if we can do those through double delivery, that'll help de-risk the release branch. Does anyone have concerns with where that date is at today?
I know Toby mentioned to me that he had some concerns that we wouldn't be able to make that date. I don't know if he's on the call. Oh, seems to be on the call.
Yeah, so my biggest concern was with the method handle delivery, which was proposed for 0.25. So I did have some discussions with Dan earlier, and the new plan is that we will not target the OpenJDK method handles for 0.25. We'll target it to the following release. So this alleviates my immediate concerns. However, what this means is that all the new method handle features that were targeted for JDK 16 have to be implemented in the existing OpenJ9 implementation. So this gives us, around 2 to 3 weeks to get that done. I think this is achievable, and I think we will aim for the code split date, but the worst case, we will double deliver if we slip for those. So I think I don't have too many concerns for this release right now.
Does that plan include JIT changes as well, or just VM?
For the new method handle features, we can supply a VM implementation. I believe there are simply adapters for some existing method handle APIs, so I'm not sure we need to provide a JIT implementation for them. But I think Babneet will be able to give you a more accurate answer for those ones.
I think at this time I still have to look at all the things we need to implement, and it will take a few more days to evaluate if there are any JIT changes needed. Back to you, Dan.
Bavneet, are you discussing that with Marius or Daryl or someone around the JIT changes, just getting a JIT second opinion on that?
I think I will have a discussion in our Scrum on Thursday. But at this point, I only see Java API changes which won't require any JIT support.
Okay.
I know that Likun has an item in progress, work in progress.
Those are for OpenJDK method handles.
Okay.
Those actually won't be needed for OpenJ9 method handles.
Okay.
Please do coordinate across both the developers on the VM side and the JIT side to make sure everybody's on board with the change to the delivery schedule here, and everyone is aware of it as well. So Bavneet and Toby, I'll leave that with the two of you to follow up. Make sure that that's communicated with all the groups you're working with on this.
Sounds good.
Are there any other concerns with this upcoming code split date that need to be addressed? Or another way to ask that, is there anything else that we expect will not make this upcoming release? Then I'll ask everyone to please take some time to look through that milestone plan, validate that the things that you own can be completed before the code split on the 31st. And if they can't, please call them out on Slack and we can have a discussion there about how to mitigate that risk. Do we have an update from the Adopt team?
I can say a few words. So we've been focusing on improving the build and testability ready for the upcoming release next week. So we did triage all the M2 builds and raised any issues that had happened there. We have found a number of things that needed fixing on the machines where they weren't, different machines of the same type weren't set up the same, so that's cleared out quite a few of apparently intermittent test failures, so we're a bit more confident about the results we're going to get next week now. On the infrastructure side, I don't see Stuart, so Adopt's losing its ability to use GoDaddy machines. So Stuart introduced a lot of testing on Docker. So the good news there is that the tests were pretty clean when put on the Docker images, being one or two test case failures, which may be as a result of the fact they're now in a Docker environment that they weren't expecting, but they're being investigated. The other thing that was done last week was a larger test suite, so the extended series was added as a weekend run at Adopt, so that ran on the normal nightly build but at the weekend a number of failures cropped up out of that, which we're going through. But this weekend we're planning to run those same tests on the M2 build for the next week's release to make sure that I'll see if there's anything that has been identified by those tests that we don't yet know about. I think that's mostly it. Oh, and work to move the building to the Eclipse Adoption project is ongoing, but making progress. Any questions? Anything I've missed that was of particular interest?
Nothing from my side. Thanks for the update, Simon.
Is there a regular call that happens about the Adoptium move?
I believe there is, but I'm not on it. So Shelley and Stuart from my team will be the ones to query.
Okay.
I see the infrastructure update says there's no update this week, so thank you for filling that in. In terms of our any other business section, we've discussed the method handles update a little bit. Is there anything additional that we should discuss here today? We will focus on the updated schedule as well, and some work to fix up the 0.25 release plan to move things out there. So, all right. In terms of CMake, just following up on some of the items that have been open here for a bit, I wanted to ask if the ZOS support is complete now. Devin, I see that you're not on mute, but I can't hear you, so I don't know if we're having a connection issue there. Devin, are you able to respond?
While we're waiting for Devin, I haven't seen any changes go in, so I'm going to say no, the ZOS support is not complete.
Okay. And we had been targeting the January quarterly release for JDK 11 support to be complete, at least in the open platforms. Do you know if we've been able to hit that target?
Yeah, everything's CMake enabled except for ZOS. For Java 11 only.
Okay. That's a great starting point then, because it means we should be able to extend that forward fairly easily. 8 will be the more difficult one. It's my understanding as well. So
Yeah, so we did some builds to try and move it forward, but there were some issues that Devin was looking at. I think some of the changes hadn't been forward ported.
I guess it would be good to get a statement clarification from Devin as well on how far off we are from having 16 enabled. Is it sort of, as we said earlier, it's 2 weeks to be able to complete that.
The change, I think some of the changes need to be forward ported, and there's been some changes to the OpenJDK code that might also require updates.
Okay. All right. Marius, I just wanted to check with you around the K8 and Helm discussion.
Yeah. So Chris opened an OpenJ9 discussion issue, and the conclusion of that was that we would store the binary Helm chart in GitHub in the OpenJ9 utils repo in a separate branch. And the reasoning behind that was that the size of the binary is very small, it's 9K. That should not increase the overall size of the repo.
If that zip is going to change every release, that repo will gradually become
over time. So Adam said that 30, 40K per year should be nothing. Yes, there will be 9K for each release, multiplied by the number of releases.
Is there okay, I'm somewhat surprised by that outcome. If you can add the link to the discussion item here, that would help.
Yeah, let me give that to you. I think it's 11587.
11587.
Oh, I get it wrong. Yeah, that's the one.
All right, I will include the link there, and we can follow up on that.
Okay.
Is there anything else to call out on that issue?
No, so if we are finally going with that, I'll have to file for an Eclipse security.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably worth getting the CQ filed either way.
Okay.
Confirm that that's the correct direction offline. Reminder that the next microjet meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Don't see Scott on the call, so I'll assume that that was the only update there. Marius, is there any update for the CanOSP project?
So I asked the developers, now the semester is over, no longer, let's say, interested in the project, asked them if they still want to contribute to it, and one of them expressed interest to continue to work on the PR and address the concerns that were raised from the review. Though his contributions, of course, will be to a lesser degree than he did in the past, due to course workload.
So this will continue to make progress
Yes.
until it's ready to merge.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. In terms of the next item, the compressed and default combined build, are we still on target for JDK 16?
In terms of implementing the mixed refs builds themselves, just still investigating the DDR failure on big Endian platforms, but the issue building on ZOS was resolved.
So is the big Endian platform the only remaining issue?
Yes, at this time that's all that I've seen for mixed refs.
And do you expect that to be resolved before the code split for
Yeah,
JDK 16?
I think so. Still in the middle of investigation, but I think it should be able to be resolved.
I think we have another issue we left behind regarding verbose GC split, DLL, and currently we do not have resources to work on this. We need to do something, maybe duplicate it or do something.
Sorry, Dimitri, I caught that there was an issue with verbose GC, but I missed.
Yes. So we do not have split of verbose GC DLL. Like
Okay.
we cannot use it in for like one of the things, like it's only compressed or only full, and we either need to modify APIs we are taking data to have it dynamic or duplicate it. So this thing was left behind in December and we never returned back really to it. We briefly look, see it's not easy to modify APIs, and currently it's in a question really.
And you're saying you don't have resources to work on this?
At the moment, yes. So we need to check, is it easy to duplicate or we could do something about this?
Okay, I can look into the duplication side. I briefly looked into that previously. It seemed to require duplication of all the verbose GC libraries, and then those are used by a bunch of other libraries, so it might involve a lot of duplication. I'll chat with GAC to double check on that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And contact with me or Alex, and we will decide together what we are going to do with it.
Sure, awesome. Sounds good.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, as for the test side, we added the common use compressed ops options. So it's 150 and 650. That's both in the system test and the OpenJDK test. And we're going to introduce a new option for running non-ops on 32-bit. That's coming up soon. Should be done this week.
Okay. And Lan, you see no other blockers from a test side on enabling this?
No, I don't see blockers.
Excellent. Right. To follow up with Daryl, who's not on the call, about the GitHub actions for the Travis linter. So, is there anything else people want to discuss today?
Hi, it's Devin here. I realized I could just phone into the call, so if we wanted to go back to the CMake stuff.
Okay. Yep.
So I've been actually mostly looking at the issue with getting debug information on ZOS without having to double compile for the UMA builds. So I have a solution now, and it was now testing to make sure that DDR works, and it does seem to work. I'm going to do a little bit more thorough testing, but it looks like we've got a solution there. And then in terms of CMake changes there, I'm hoping to get the last of those PRs opened and hopefully merged sometime this week.
Sorry, Devin, I missed the last thing you said.
So for the changes side for CMake, I'm hoping that the last PRs are get opened up sometime this week.
Okay. And for the outlook on JDK 16, is there still outstanding?
For that, I think the only thing really was dealing with XL Clang, and Sharon was looking at that. I don't know if she's had a chance to actually do a lot of looking there, though.
Yeah, I have done some initial investigation, but I haven't had a chance to work on the implementation.
Okay. Given the timeline we're on to be able to get this in before the code split on the 31st, is this doable given the other things that are going on?
I think the verbose GC stuff from mixed refs might end up taking quite a bit of time, so it might end up making sense to push the mixed ref stuff to the next release, and then that way I can focus on the Xclang work. But I will double check with everyone to see if that makes sense.
Okay. From my personal perspective, I think I would rather get the mixed refs into 16 if possible, to give people more time to pick that up and try it before we hit the release or we might be ready to turn it on for a quarterly update. So if we're able to get it into 16, that would be better than delaying it.
Okay, so prioritizing the mixed refs builds.
That would be my preference, but I'm sure there'll be some further conversation around this as well.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but doesn't the mixed ref stuff depend on CMake? I don't believe it builds under UMA.
Yes, it is only for CMake at this point.
Okay, well, that may determine our path forward then. Thanks, Devin. Sounds like we need the CMake support before we can do mixed refs. So.
Okay. The other thing is I could disable mixed refs on JDK 16.
Why don't we take a look at who else can help with some of these items? If there's, let's start the discussion on what to do for GC verbose, so that at least we have a plan, can understand how long that'll take, and then some of that becomes a discussion of who's available to help complete that in the next 2 weeks or to push that forward.
Okay, that sounds good. I will start those discussions.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? All right, then thank you, everybody, and we'll meet again on January 20th.
Thanks.